very special welcome to my good friend, our buddy here, Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune. How you doing, buddy?
I got to get one of those Twitch accounts. What are they?
I know you don't. Don't worry about it. No. They're not aimed at you. Don't worry.
Right.
And they're not aimed at me.
I don't
just
even
wave
have
to the
one.
people.
That's right.
Just wave to the people.
Yeah.
Facebook. You've got Facebook,
I got
right?
Facebook,
Your
yeah.
family's watching. See, you're right there. It's right. The camera's right
I'm going to
there.
go ahead and say no on that one.
Okay. All right. So we gather today. Week 14 is coming up. The Vikings will be playing host to the Detroit Lions. They have 3 games left. They have the LA Chargers left. They have the Green Bay Packers left. They have the Chicago Bears left. 3 of those 4 are at home. We gather today for a State of the Vikings discussion with 4 games left and a season that, I mean, as we talked about, Chip, today on the Conduits of Trouble podcast, which you can find through the various Score North platforms very soon. Might be a 12-4 season. So certainly not an unsuccessful season. But to dissect where we think this franchise is right now, and I'll start with this one. Would any of you guys, if I had come to you in training camp in July and said, okay, with 4 games left, here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the fact that right now in December, what, 5th today? 4th today. Thank you, Danny.
You're welcome. I got you, Judd.
We're thinking you got my back. We are going to be talking about a team that offensively we think is pretty good. But here's the curveball. The defense is going to be a problem. Just the fact that we're starting with that discussion point to me amazes me, boys.
Yeah, I think you would say, they got a losing record. And it's amazing the growth that the offense has made this year, and equally amazing the decline that the defense is showing, and particularly the pass defense. And Mike Zimmer, that's his baby. He's a cornerbacks and defensive back coach at heart. And to see the drop off, obviously, Xavier Rhodes is the kind of the face of that right now. But that's the concern I have for this team. I think they're going to finish 12-4, unless the Packers slip up somewhere else. I think they're going to finish 12-4 too and win a division. And so you're going to ask the Vikings to have to play 3 road games in the playoffs.
Yep.
With the defenses struggling right now, it's less than ideal, we'll say.
So if you would have told me back in August that this team would be 8-4, I would have believed that result, but I would have really doubted the process to how they got there, because I would have expected the defense to still be really good. And I wasn't necessarily as high on them in August as some people who thought that they could win 11 or 12 games, because I thought this was a 9-win team because I didn't believe in them offensively. And I couldn't have been more wrong about that, but the defense couldn't have been more of the opposite of what I thought it was going to be. I didn't necessarily think it'd be the 2017 defense where they're number 1 across the board, just the best defense in football. But I thought they'd be a top 5 defense.
I thought that'd be top 5. It's amazing. I said early in the year that I didn't see one 11-win team in this division. I just didn't. I thought they'd all beat each other up. I thought the Bears would be better, obviously.
Sure.
And I thought each team was flawed enough that it'd be tough for someone to get to 11 wins. Well, you have 2 to get to 12. So what do I know? But
because we thought Detroit might. I hate to give them too much credit, but we thought Detroit might be.
Does that say something about the teams or about the league?
I think it says a ton about this league.
Probably.
I think it says a lot about this league.
Yeah.
I don't think the league's good. So
no, I think there's pretty good parity at the top. I think the NFC, when you look at who I think is going to be in the playoffs, those teams, I don't know that there's one team where you're like, all right, this is them. Everybody else is playing for second. I think this is maybe the cheap way out, but I think it's where you play. I think home field advantage is going to be remarkably huge because I think these teams are all pretty similar.
Well, and about the NFC, I think that there are 6 good teams in this conference. Now,
Agreed.
Unfortunately, only 5 of them are going to make the playoffs because the Rams are not going to make the playoffs, and Dallas is not one of those good teams, in my opinion, and they're going to be in the playoffs because someone has to represent that division. But after that, it's not even worth talking about anyone else. There's no one. I mean, Philadelphia has had every opportunity to grasp a playoff spot and win that division, and they can't beat Miami. No one else is any good. No one else is worth even mentioning.
I know.
So with that being said, and I think we all agree here that they're in this conference is not one dominant, oh, wow, you're not going to get past them. They're just too damn good team. With that being said, though, here's where I struggle. I agree with the statement that was just made, but I don't see a wild card playoff path for the Vikings to the Super Bowl. I could see a playoff path to the postseason for sure. I think they will be the 6th seed, if nothing else. I can see a path to perhaps, let's say, an upset victory in Green Bay. I wouldn't pick them in that game, but if they won, I would not be shocked. But the ask there becomes so large. And here's the one thing I don't think is fair. I think it's very fair to say that since the Giants game, aside from the Chiefs game, Kirk Cousins has played really well, right?
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins deserves a ton of credit. Kirk Cousins, if I had told you in March of 2018 when he signed on the dotted line that after a disappointing first year, he was going to do what he's done in 2019, I think we all say buy in, it's great. But I don't think it's fair to then go to Kirk now and say, well, I got bad news for you. Your defense is struggling, and so put the team on your back, starting with playoff game, wildcard game 1, and carry them. I don't think he's capable of that, and I don't think that ask is fair.
On the road 3 times too.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
I'm not even worried about necessarily Kirk being on the road.
No, I'm not just saying him. I'm just saying the team in general.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that on the road consistently.
Because that would have been my concern weeks ago. Would have been, well, I don't think Kirk Cousins can win on the road in the playoffs. Now it's, well, defense travels, and this defense is going to travel, and they're not very good.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I think this offense can score with anybody.
Yeah.
I really do. I think this offense,
which is remarkable.
Well, think about how we think about it now versus what week was it they played Chicago for?
Yeah.
It's just polar opposite. But I don't know. And I thought this early on. We talked about it about a couple, 6 weeks ago, Judd, on a podcast, that I don't know that Zimmer can scheme around their issues on defense.
I don't think he can, because I think that a lot of these guys that once upon a time were really good are now a little bit older, and that makes a big difference now. When you're 30 instead of 28, or even 28 instead of 26, you're not the same athletically and physically that you once were. And I think that that's the biggest thing with a guy like Xavier Rhodes.
Especially when you've had the injuries he's had last year. I mean, he had an assortment of them last year. And to think, I thought he would be able to come back from that. Maybe not. I didn't expect him to be the Xavier Rhodes we saw 3 years ago, but still be, a high functioning cornerback. But when you start having all those injuries and you're 30, that's where it's kind of a double whammy.
So I thought, until going into Monday night's game, I thought that Zimmer might be able to scheme around these problems. I thought, all right, let's see. Because he had the whole bye week, and, there's a lot of time to watch film there. And these guys, all they do is watch film.
And he's really good at that.
Yeah. They watch. I guarantee you the Rams fall off is not a fluke. All anybody did last summer was watch Rams, McVay, and Goff film and think, oh, I can stop that. Or no, I can stop that. But after Monday, I'm convinced that even a guy who is as good a defensive coach as Mike is can't scheme around this, because he did against Seattle what made perfect sense, right? To him, he dropped the safeties back. He said, I'm going to stop the most dangerous player, Russell Wilson. And he did to a certain degree. And what happened?
They ran the ball.
They ran the ball. And the other problem, and why I don't think that you can scheme out of this completely, is the interior of that defensive line is not the same too. And so, you know what? If you want to run against a team that's going to protect against the pass, and that's the Vikings, I think you can do it.
And that's
proven.
And that's Seattle's MO. I mean, they're really good. They want to be a power running team. And the other thing is, look at the potential quarterbacks you would face in the playoffs. Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers. You're facing the top guys, and so who are really good at exploiting matchups. And that's the problem. If they think, I want to pick on Mike Hughes, or I want to pick on Xavier Rhodes, they're going to pick on him. And I don't know how much scheming you can do to eliminate that when you have the top quarterbacks that are really good.
I mean, we've seen guys like Case Keenum be able to execute that in regular season games. If Case Keenum can do that for Washington when they come here on a Thursday night and target Xavier Rhodes over and over and over again, or Dak Prescott can target Mike Hughes 17 times in a game, what's Drew Brees going to be able to do? What are these top quarterbacks going to do? And that's no disrespect to Dak Prescott, who kind of does belong in that conversation, but what are those guys going to do? What's Aaron Rodgers going to do?
Yeah.
All right. So let's say they go 12-4. They go to the playoffs and they're the 6th seed. And let's say they play in Lambeau Field against the Packers and they lose. Start with Danny here. Should Zimmer and Spielman be on the hot seat at that point if you go one playoff game and out?
Zimmer should absolutely be, yes. I'm not there with Spielman yet because it does look like he hit on a quarterback, and that matters to me more than anything else that you can do as a personnel guy is hit on that position, and it looks like he's done that. But I don't think if and when the Vikings ever win a Super Bowl, Mike Zimmer is not going to be the head coach of that team. And the sooner that this organization realizes that to be true, the sooner they can move on and they can look for that guy that is going to be the head coach of this team, because I don't think Zimmer's the one.
I say no. 12-4, you're not making any changes. And does Zimmer have flaws? Sure, every coach does. But I look around and see some of the bad coaches in this league and think this is not a poorly coached team. I do think they're going to have to take some serious, long, hard discussions about how they're going to repair this and turn this roster over this offseason.
And defensively,
and
those are his guys.
That's his guys. And you're
very
talking about
interesting.
Xavier, Everson, is Wayne's back? Is Linval back? That's where I think it's going to be difficult for them, no matter what happens the rest of the season. Contract-wise, I don't know all the penalties and all the ins and outs of, cap implications.
Well,
but
and Chip, too, this has to be a year in which I think that you have to go in March on the open market and sign an O lineman who can make an impact, right? This has to be that year. And I think Riley Reif is basically done. I think physically he's just going to be done. So you can't, there has to be an investment of some of your cap room and probably a sort of fairly significant amount in that position finally.
Well, and they've had this core group together, mostly defense, but some offense too. You'd put Kyle Rudolph in it, and he's had a really good year. But this is where you're going to see that core start to get dismantled a little bit, I think, because it's just the age is caught up. And I don't say the window's closed on them, but you see the decline on some of these guys. And it's going to be hard for Zimmer, I'm sure, to part ways with some of these pieces that he's so emotionally attached to.
And he's been loyal to them beyond belief, right?
Sure, 100%. But if they go 12-4 and get in the playoffs, they're not going to, and they should not make sweeping changes.
651-646-8255, 651-646-8255. We're in the TCL broadcast studios. If you'd like to join the conversation, Vikings Ventline is the show. Segment 1, it's Zulgad, Danny Cunningham, Chip Scoggins of the Star Tribune, and Chad in South Dakota. How are you, Chad?
Hey, guys. I'm pretty good. How are you?
Great.
Well, what's up, Chad?
Hey, I was listening to Mike's press conference yesterday, and he was asked about Xavier Rhodes, and he noted the improvement that he's seen. And I'll tell you what, if that's improvement, we're in trouble. And, I don't think he's going to bench him, and I don't even know if he'll cut him after this year. You look back to Terrence Newman, we had him out there on a hover-around scooter trying to keep up with fast wide receivers, and even after he couldn't run anymore, he still said, "That's all right, I'll make you a coach." He just sticks with them until they absolutely can barely move, and expects them to keep up with these NFL caliber receivers, and it just doesn't work. But I'll hang up and listen to your thoughts.
Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah, one, I would be stunned if Zimmer came out and ripped Xavier and said he's not the same player or whatever. I mean, he's just not going to do that. He's going to try to pump him up as best he can. I think most coaches do that. Now, privately, they may be saying something different, but his point's right on. Is like, I know there's a lot of conversation about should they bench Rhodes in lieu of who? Like, who are you putting? You got to have a
Holton Hill.
Maybe, but we've seen Mike Hughes get some run, and they picked on him.
I'd still play Mike Hughes more than Rhodes with how Rhodes is declining. Rhodes can't. I'm telling
Rhodes
you,
Rhodes can't play anymore, man.
If you go back and watch the touchdown against, and it might have been, look, for all I know, maybe Harrison Smith did goof up, okay? But if you go back and watch the overhead view that ESPN showed, Rhodes' right leg is almost dragging behind him as he runs. He is, for lack of a better term, Chipper, he's hopping.
Yeah.
There's something, and I watched him in the binoculars against the Broncos, and it's the same thing. He tries to jam you if he can and hold you up as long as possible, but then he hops after you.
Yeah, and I think,
which is sad, by the way. I'm not making fun of him.
And I think what Danny hit on too, it seems like the more reasonable outcome versus just outright bench. Okay, you're not playing. Just mix up the reps.
Yeah.
Where Holton gets 12 reps. You give him 12 less reps, whatever. plays off. I think that's a more realistic approach than just say, all right, Xavier, we can't trust you to be on the field. We're not going to play it. I would be stunned if that happens. But I can see him maybe giving those guys a little bit more run.
It's really not even possible to do that when you've got 46 active guys on game day, right?
Yeah.
Like it's hard to say you're not going to play at all, Xavier Rhodes. Like that's a really difficult thing to say. Just
you're not scratching him, yeah. And I don't think we're saying scratch him at all.
I don't think that I don't think he can be on the field the way that he has been on the field
for 60 plays.
Yeah, like you can't trust him to do that.
You know what, too? There also might be a reality to this situation, which Mike is never going to come out and say, and he can't come out and say it, and I'm not surprised. He might have had to accept after Monday's loss that, as our friend Kelly Campbell said time and time again, it is what it is. I'm serious, because if you're Mike's not a dumb guy.
Yeah.
If you schemed as best you could, and look, if you get what's his name that they're going to play on Sunday, David Blau.
Yeah.
If you get David Blau, you could probably beat David Blau into submission. But if you're Zim and you're looking at Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees in the playoffs potentially, you might be privately thinking, I've done what I can do. Because you guys are right. Xavier Rhodes is not going to be scratched on game day.
No.
It's not going to be inactive number 29 Xavier Rhodes. We all get that.
Could you imagine if it was?
And it would make and it would embarrass him beyond belief. And why do that?
Zim would never do that.
No,
he wouldn't.
Not to one of his guys.
And I don't expect him to.
Yeah.
But he also might be privately thinking, I can probably scheme us out of the David Blau or against the David Blaus, the Trubiskys. But when I get Rodgers, when I get Brees, when I get Wilson, I've done what I can do. And now the fault goes to the personnel decision making that they made months ago, or not making a trade. But that might sort of be what he's saying is, look, folks, this is going to be done against a good quarterback, and there's not much more I can really do here. And that's my fault personnel wise. But now we're to a point I can't fix it.
No, and that's where you wonder if he comes up, with more blitz packages or
Anthony Barr blitzing.
Yeah, I mean, different in terms of stuff he does on the back end. We're trying to create pressure on a quarterback to help those guys out on the back end. That's where I wonder if he might turn his attention to, hey, I may have to blitz more, or I may have to, do some more exotic things with Harrison Smith to get him, involved and help out. So, but you're right.
But he tried with Smith, and then it turned out they wanted Smith to drop back into coverage. Yes. I think
someone didn't get the memo on that one, but you're right, Judd. It's something that's going to have to be. It is what it is for this year, and it's something you're going to have to address in the offseason when you take a hard look at this roster and how do you upgrade it.
Kirk Cousins deserves how much credit for going from the Week 4 debacle. The first 4 weeks of this year were not good, and Week 4 was awful. To me, that is a pretty good storyline, though, of a guy who we all thought, oh my gosh, what's wrong? And starting with the Giants game. And you know what? You beat the Giants. They're awful.
Yeah.
But after that, you've gone on a really, really nice run. I think he deserves a lot of credit here.
I can't remember an athlete in this town that the narrative has flipped to that degree in such a short amount of time. Because think about what the temperature was Monday morning after Chicago this year. How many friends and supporters did Cousins have at that point?
I mean, there's another one on the basketball team trying to do the same thing right now.
Yeah, Wiggins, but he hasn't got to that.
No, he hasn't gotten to that point, but he's on that track. Kirk Cousins was. I think Kirk deserves a ton of credit for this.
100%. Yeah.
I think that, one of the most improved players in the NFL, in my opinion, with what he's done in the in-season turnaround's been drastic.
And how much do you think it's scheme versus someone getting in Cousins' ear to say, look, relax, cut it loose, just play and don't worry about being perfect?
I think that part's huge.
I think that's what it was. I think that's what they had. Once Stephon Diggs went AWOL for a couple days, that's what they had to do. They had no other choice. They had to say, this is what we got. This is what we're going to do. We're going to open it up, Kirk. Go. And Kirk has run with it.
But I think they got to Kirk as well privately and said, dude, you've got to lighten up here. The weight of the world is not on you constantly, because if you play it like that, you're going to fail. And Kirk since then has been way more accepting to me of enjoying his job. He looked like a guy in Chicago who hated his job.
He was miserable.
Yeah.
That's not
he
gonna,
looked
that
miserable.
doesn't work in sports.
Yeah, and I do think he has a little bit of perfectionist in him where he wants everything according to plan, scripted, has to be like this. And that's a hard way to play. And let's be honest, there's also that weight of the contract. I'm sure that's when you're not playing well, that weight becomes even heavier. And so I don't know if it was a family member, a coach, someone got to him and just said, breathe, relax, cut it loose. If you make a mistake, who cares? Move on. Because he just seems like body language and watching him and demeanor, he seems, and success helps that, right? When you're playing well, you're obviously going to be that way. But something happened. I just don't think it. I think someone got to him and he had a new awareness or a new thought process in how he goes about his job.
He was burdened. He was 1,000% burdened. And it also, so I think there's three things post week 4 Bears loss at work here. One, it's that somebody got to him or people got to him and said, Kirk, you've got to lighten up here. This is not life or death. You're paid a lot to play well, but you have to play and have fun. The second thing is, I think the Diggs meltdown was a blessing because Diggs was not mad at Kirk. Diggs was mad at a system that he's like, what are you guys doing? I'm Stephon Diggs, and we at the time have Thielen as well, and you're not going to throw to us down the field, which made no sense too because Kirk's best attribute probably is the down the field passes, right?
Yeah.
It's the short passes where he's not as good. He's great, and so I think those two things were huge. But I also think that there was just a timing thing of he started to get comfortable with what Kubiak and Stefanski were doing. And that's a huge thing. And he admitted in June, he basically said, people think I know this offense inside out. I don't. And so I think by about week 5 or so, especially against the Giants, where you can work on things because the Giants don't care about football, it helps.
Yeah, I think that's a big part too, that he did talk a lot earlier that, hey, this is brand new and it's going to take time for everyone to adjust this, not just receivers, him too. And so, but I do think they started accentuating his strengths after that, bootlegs, rollouts, getting him on the move, out of the pocket.
But that was partially, I think, because of what Diggs did.
Sure.
I think Diggs helped that.
And so I think the Stefanski and Kubiak adjusted too. And so I think all those things kind of came together. Now you're seeing a quarterback playing at a really high level.